Alrighty, so this video is going to be about sealed strategy. This is going to get you ready to dominate your pre-release or any other sealed events you might be interested in participating in. Now, sealed is very different from constructed or premiere. We build decks from packs that we open. So I'm gonna do a little bit of introduction to sealed. It'll be pretty quick, just to give you like the rules and the changes from premiere for anyone who has not played this kind of format before. This is the typical format you would play at a pre-release, so if you've ever been to a pre-release, you've likely played sealed. After that will be some sealed strategy. It'll be like theory and like an in-depth guide on like what I do to kind of get ready for building a sealed pool. And the last part, the largest part of this video, is going to be me actually building a sealed pool with a pre-release kit that I was given in the media kit from FFG. So that'll be the end of this video. The largest portion will be actual live deck building, me talking over kind of what I'm doing as I'm opening the packs and sorting the cards. So before we get going, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Helps out a lot. Check out the Patreon if you're looking for some more content from me. But here we go. So first, the rules. So in sealed, you will be opening a pre-release kit if it's the pre-release. Otherwise, you'll be given 6 packs. You have to make a deck with those 6 packs. At the pre-release, you are also allowed to use the 2 leaders, Ahsoka and Grievous, that you will be getting in your pre-release kit. But normally, you would only be able to use the leaders in the actual packs. You will be building a 30-card deck, minimum. In my opinion, that should also be your maximum. But yes, you have to have at least 30 cards in your deck. You can use any common base, so even if you don't open the base that you want, you can use any of them. The store will likely have a pile of them that you can use, or you can borrow them from someone sitting across from you. That doesn't really matter. So you're not locked into the colors of bases that you open in your packs. Like I said, any leaders that you open, those are the ones you have to play with. And then lastly, the deck building portion, it usually is about 1 round timer, so maybe 55 minutes. It should be plenty of time to sort your cards and get some deck building. People also tend to be pretty helpful at pre-releases from my experience, especially if you haven't done this before. You can always ask for some opinions and advice. These are pretty casual events. They're meant to be fun, meant to like crack open some packs and enjoy it. If you're playing at like a more competitive sealed event, some of those do exist, then of course that part of it will likely not be happening. All right, so the strategy. So first things first, you're at the mercy of what you open. You'll see how I sort my cards in the deck building portion, but you want to look for high density, primarily in a couple colors, especially when they match a leader that you open, right? You're gonna end up with pools usually pretty mixed between 4 colors, but there tends to be 1 or 2 colors that just have more cards or more good cards, or like you opened 6 villain red cards or something, and the villain and the double aspect cards, like not double red, but like heroism with a color or villain with a color, usually tend to be a little more powerful. So if you have like a good density of those and then like a nice big pile of like neutral colored cards in that color, it definitely is something you need to be looking out for. Second, efficient leaders. Sealed is not really about synergy. It's very difficult to make like very synergistic decks that require like setups and combos. You just want stats for the most part on your leader. Some leaders do just have better innate abilities. You can compare something from like set 1, for instance, Jin or so, just a pile of stats with a very relevant onboard ability that like shrinks opponents' units. Jin was one of the best, if not the best, limited sealed draft leader in set 1. On the other hand, something like Hera in limited and sealed, not so great, right? Because you'd maybe be able to play 1 or 2 off aspect specters if you manage to open them right. They're not super synergistic there. So you want to look at efficient leaders with good stats and then effective, not so hard to implement abilities, right? Like Pre-Vizsla in this set, he gets efficient stats, but his ability is like going to be incredibly difficult to ever use in a game of limited. So he gets like 1/2 of it. Whereas something like I don't know, General Grievous, also efficient stats, and an ability that probably would be not too difficult to use. There's a lot of cards that make droids, so think about it that way as you open your leaders. Nala Se would be probably one that you would never play in sealed, right? You're like very unlikely to have like a giant pile of clones that you want to play at the expense of actually having a relevant leader with stats. Next, bombs. So there are not a ton of them. There were a lot more in like set 1, but there are some just like giantly incredibly powerful cards, and you want to try to play them, sometimes at the expense of another color that might be a little more deep. Remember, you're playing a 30 card deck in an 8-turn game, which, you know, that might be kind of average in a sealed. You are going to draw 14 cards plus the 6, that's 20. You're going to see 20 of 30 cards in a lot of games. You are going to draw this bomb, this amazing card, a lot of the time. So if you have something like that that can straight up win the game on the spot, think something like Overwhelming Barrage in set 1, or Luke Skywalker, right? Those kinds of power cards. In this set, you know, I don't think there are cards actually on that tier of bomb, but there are some that are incredibly powerful, especially these like rares, big units. Like there's a lot of like 5 and 6 and 7 cost, like just stat monsters, and those can be very efficient to try to squeeze into your deck. Next up, removal is rare. It just is. There isn't that much of it. When you open it, you won't be able to play 3 copies of Takedown in your deck, right? You're not building a premier deck where you just get to like play any removal you want. So look out for removal. It's not very common. It's mixed in a bunch of colors, and your deck probably won't have that much of it. So if you see that you're getting some in a color, very much consider, hey, I might want this. Also, removal might be the most splashable card type in the game. So even something like cheap removal that you wouldn't think is worth +2 extra resources can be sometimes in sealed. All right. Next, I mentioned this a lot, but stats really are the name of the game. Sealed is not about synergy. It's just about efficiency. If you take control of the board with stats earlier or in the mid game, it's very hard to ever come back, because you don't get to like force feed your deck a bunch of comeback mechanics. You're really just playing a bunch of commons in a sealed deck, and those cards tend to just not be good at enabling comebacks. So efficient units are really good. There's a 6/7 for 6 in this set. It's a Republic AT something. It costs 1 less if you have 3 units, right? So even if it didn't have that text, 6 cost 6/7 is a card I'm into. It was one of my favorite commons in set 1, the ATST in Villain. Just 6/7 overwhelm for 6. Stats are great. They're just very good, and you want efficiency all through your curve. Next up, curve. So 2 and 3 drops really are vastly important. Sometimes even about half my deck is going to be 2s and 3s. It's very hard to win a game if you don't play something on turn 1 or turn 2, or basically every turn. It's just the issues happen more early in the game. If you draw a hand, you just can't play something on the first or second turn. You'll probably lose that game in sealed. In constructed, sometimes a deck can like tailor itself to be okay missing a turn like that, especially if they have a leader that can do something. But in sealed, like I said, it's all about efficiency. If you fall behind on board, it's very difficult to come back. So you want to look at a good curve of early units, and sometimes that even means half your deck, because on your 4 resource turn, you can still play a 3 drop and not insta lose, right? But you can't play a 4 drop on 3 resources. So definitely skew that earlier game, that 2s and 3s, and you do want to curve out. But like, remember, if you have 4s and 5s, by the time turn 4 comes around, you've already drawn 6 extra cards. You've likely been able to find something to play. Earlier in the game, you're only drawing that 6, or then that extra 2, that 8, right? So more important early in the game to make sure you hit that curve. And lastly, 2 for 1. So this goes into the efficiency. Ambush is basically the best keyword in the game in sealed, because these units are the cleanest way to make 2 for 1 trades. They can kill something and survive, and that is awesome. They are basically removal with a benefit, right? They're not 1-for-1. These units are very, very good. They're not a ton of them, but I definitely just look to jam as many ambush units in decks, but also look for other 2-for-1s. There are other ways, and that's where that efficiency in stats comes from. Just big units, right? You play a 5-cost 5/5, that's likely going to be able to take 2 cards from your opponent unless they also play a 5-cost 5/5, right? That card can kill a 3/3 and then kill the next thing, right? So 2-for-1s goes a lot with like the stats are the name of the game portion of this, where you just want efficiency and being able to like push advantage as much as possible and not fall behind. And that's a great way, ambush, best way to accomplish that. All right, so that's a little bit of background on like the strategy of sealed, and gonna get even deeper during the deck building. I will talk about how I sort the cards, what I'm thinking about as I open them, because I'm already starting to have opinions as I'm opening cards about where I'm leaning towards, and like sometimes that changes drastically if you just like open a pack and you're like, all right, got this like legendary red hero card and an uncommon red hero card, and like all of a sudden like that pool has just gotten so much stronger. But I like to start mapping out my deck building as I'm going, not just like open everything and sort everything, because I find it more difficult for myself if just I have to start from scratch once all the packs are opened. But yeah, hope you enjoy the deck building portion. Let me know what you think of this video, and until next time, take care. All right, so this is the sealed deck construction portion of the video. Going to be opening this pre-release kit. Thanks to FFG for sending this over in the media kit. What I'm going to do is during the process kind of talk through how I would be building my deck at a sealed event, right? How I'd be sorting the cards, what I'd be looking out for in terms of like the cards I'm opening, what I'm leaning towards, how, and just kind of talk through. And you know, we're going to get some pack openings, which is pretty exciting stuff. As a reminder for the pre-release, you do get to play with your the leaders that they give in the pre-release kit, right? So that's going to be Ahsoka and General Grievous. So both of these leaders will, like, we're going to keep them here. We can play them in this event. At a normal seal that wasn't a pre-release, you wouldn't be able to play with Ahsoka or General Grievous unless you luckily open them as a showcase in one of your packs, but otherwise they will very rarely be seen in like actual drafts or sealed gameplay. All right, now for the exciting part, I guess, for some people. We got a Jango Fett, so leaders, I like keeping them out. I like being able to kind of know which direction I might be forced into. Now, of course, you get to play with any base that you open or any base around, right? Like the store is just going to have bases, so that part of the color is not restricted. You don't have to play with the bases that you get in your packs. You're always going to be free. So we got Resupply, a very good card to play. So what I generally do is separate the colors. Here we got Squadron of Vultures. It's red. We got blue, another green neutral card. So as we kind of start opening more and more cards, I'll be able to see more about like, all right, I got more villain cards. So this is just a generic villain card. We got a hero red card, generic yellow. But I think the generic cards are pretty important because they're going to be able to fit into either color pair, while or like leader, faction, heroism, villainy, while the hero or villainy locked cards are going to be a little more difficult. So here we got the heroism. So in terms of the cards I'm actually noticing, so like Resupply is great. I think the Patrol Fighter here is going to be a pretty strong card. Both of these exploit cards, the Squadron and the Multi-Troop, you know, they certainly playables, but nothing exciting, right? Cloud Dive Trooper is a 1-drop 2/1 with, you know, coordinate ability. Asajj is another solid exploit card, but nothing that I'm like, whoa, I have to play this, right? So it's something I definitely look for. Sword and Shield Remover. So R2 is a card I'd be very happy to play in a deck. And actually Rush Clovis as well. This is our rare. So he's a 4-drop 3/5 with Raid 2 with a decent on-attack ability. I think probably one of the better cards we opened in this pack. R2 is another one. And a second Squadron of Vultures, okay? So we actually got 3 villain red cards in this pack.
A lot of yellow, and, you know, not much else, but the best cards are probably both in yellow. They just happen to be in heroism. R2 is a very just like generically powerful card. Rush Clovis, a powerful 4-drop. So like I really like good early units because a lot of what we're doing is curving out, and you know you're gonna have bombs in the later costs, but generally more important to have a good early curve. So now we got Quinlan Voss is another leader. So we have both a hero and villainy yellow, which is good. Like we can go in either direction there. And I think both Django and Quinlan, like they're 5-cost leaders with good stats, pretty solid. Like Quinlan actually has like what I think is a really good limited ability too. Giving you free damage is always going to be effective. So I like the heroes we've opened, the leaders. Vanquish, solid removal, right? Removal is pretty rare in sealed, so happy to see a Vanquish. If I end up in blue, it's almost certainly going to be in the deck. We are never going to play this aggrieved Parliamentarian, so I usually also just like have a pile of cards that I just like very much don't want to play and hope that I have enough playables that I won't need to play them. Droid Commando is a very good card. I talked in the first part of the video how good Ambush is in limited. It generates those 2-for-1s. Now he doesn't always have Ambush, but we're going to look to see if we can enable that, certainly if we end up in green villain. You know, Dendup's Loyalist is not a great card, but is just like a fine 2-drop. Same with this Royal Guard Attaché. So like they're 2/3s basically. It's not exciting. Encouraging Leadership, nothing great there. In Pursuit, not a great card. Phase 2 Clone Trooper, though, you know, he has Ambush. He's a 3/2. I would treat that more as like a removal, not so much like a value play. It's very rare that he'd be able to kill something and survive, unless, of course, he's ambushing into droids. But he's still like a 3-cost that deals 3 to something, which can be very effective. By Security Team is a good 2-drop, 3/1 Sentinel. So, again, we're just like adding into our yellow pool. So I'm already like, all right, yellow is looking solid, especially because both our leaders that we've gotten, actually 3 of them if you include Grievous, are already in yellow. Kraken is a solid 5-drop in green villain and goes really well with the Droid Commando. Like it's making droids. So I'm keeping my eye on this green villain stuff for sure. Disruptive Blast. You know, it's a card I could certainly see main decking in sealed right now, giving -1/-1 to all enemies, because I expect a lot of decks will be playing things that make droids. So this just kills all their droids. It also, you know, can help in some combat situations, like I killed one of your units, but only live with 1 health. Blood Sport is another another like board wipey kind of thing, 2 damage to each ground unit, and somehow we just got another Rush Clovis and then a Confederate Tri-Fighter as a foil. So it's a solid 3/3 in space, like nothing exciting, but 2 Rush Clovis is absolutely crazy. The first 2 packs had the same rare, but it is a very good rare. So again, if you're asking me right now in 2 packs what I'm looking at playing yellow villain paired with either green or red. Like the quality of cards in the green for sure is high. The quantity is good in red. And then of course we opened a resupply, so it'd be really nice to play like Django yellow with Django green right now, and have that resupply into the next turn, being able to flip Django. Pretty strong play. The hero cards leave a lot to be desired. We just like really have barely opened any, right? R2, Soldier, and then a few of the just heroism, no color cards. Third pack. All right, Padme. So this is a leader I wouldn't be too excited about building around. It's 5 is decent, but I still think Coordinate might not be crazy easy to enable, especially in sealed where everything's about like trading units, and her stats aren't going to help too much. I don't think it's bad. It's just I'm certainly not like leaning there right when I open her. Grim Resolve is nothing I'm super excited about. Outspoken Representative is it's a decent 2-drop in hero. It doesn't do anything until it dies, but it can be Sentinel. It can be a buffer. 2 Legionnaires is a 5/4 Sentinel Overwhelm for 5, in limited and sealed. that's a fine playable. Like that's gonna go in basically most of the green decks unless you open an absolute stacked pool. Strategic Analysis, 5 cost, draw 3. It's not great. All right, Knight of the Republic. So this is a card I wouldn't really look at in Constructed right now. 6 cost, 4/7. That doesn't really do anything when you play it. It has the when it's attacked clause that says it makes a clone trooper. But I think this card would be absolutely nuts in limited. It's just big stats. It's going to be very difficult for your opponent to remove it without attacking into it, especially maybe even having to attack into it a couple times. You're getting tokens whenever it gets attacked. Card's just solid. Here's Pelta Supply Frigate. It's a decent card in Hero Yellow, right? Hero Green. And here, so this is the pack. I guess we're getting all our heroism card. Now we got a Republic Attack Pod. So it says if you control 3 or more units, it costs 1 less to play. It's fine, right? If you can get this as a 5 cost, 6/7, good. But even 6 cost, 6/7, that's decent. Like I thought AT-ST from set 1, the villain 6/7 with Overwhelm for 6, was one of the like best commons. It was just like, it went into all villainy decks. It was really good. So like this is a 6/7 for 6, and it can sometimes even cost less. Light Interceptor, on the other hand, is very poorly statted for a 5 cost. Wolfpack Escort, interesting card. Not bad. Soulless One. So, I mean, we have Grievous as an option, and Soulless One is definitely a Grievous card. So, something to look at if we decide to like play Yellow Villain. Maybe we're playing Grievous instead of Django. Nameless Valor. It only attaches tokens. I think it'd be pretty hard to pull this off, but it's possible. Rune Hako, one of the best new 2-drops probably in the whole pool, but so far would be our first villainy blue card, except we opened another one. It's Malevolence, so this is like a big exploit payoff. So far, I haven't picked up on our pool that we're going to be able to enable exploit particularly cleanly. We don't have that much stuff that makes droids and tokens. Like we opened Kraken. He's good, but he's like the only thing I think that's giving us tokens right now. So it's going to be hard for us to play Malevolence. And then we opened a foil rare. It's Luminara. So this is a 7 cost 4/9. This is a solid card. Nothing crazy about it, but like if you're not losing and you play this, it's a pretty big deal. It's going to give you a little bit of healing, and it's just a really big unit. So we definitely are looking a little bit at this blue hero stuff now, because we just opened a couple of like solid finishers, a 6-drop and a 7-drop. We also opened the 2-drop, but I still think I'm leaning into the villain pool a little more, but of course, still 3 more packs left to open. And this one, all right, another villain yellow leader is a Saj. Now, I think it's very unlikely I would play a Saj over like Django or Grievous. It's just, she seems like a very synergy heavy build around. You need a lot of events, something you don't generally have in Sealed. I just don't think she's going to be a very good leader in Sealed or Draft because of that. The stats on her aren't very good. Like, she comes out early, it's nice, but I don't think she's going to be able to make up enough of the power level purely because her ability isn't great. Perilous Position, fantastic removal. Giving -2/-2 permanently and exhausting. It's just going to be a staple card, I think, in general. A very good generic green card. 3/4 space, and for 3, you can play this in Villainy or Hero. This is going to go in every single Sealed deck that has green in it. No questions asked. Volunteer Soldier, not a good card. Not something we want to play. Vanguard Droid Bomber, 2/2 in space. If you control Separatist, deals 2. So decent if it can proc, especially in a more aggressive shell. Padawan Starfighter, you know, I think there are a decent amount of Force units, but overall I'm not super excited about this card. It's going to, even like when you finally enable it, it's not great. Like, it's still just a 2/4. We got a big tank to enable in Villain Exploit, if we can somehow do that. And we opened probably the best Villain Exploit enabler, which is Droid Deployment, the 2 cost that makes 2 1/1s. I'd probably play this in most villainy decks regardless of the exploit, but certainly in ones that can capitalize on those droids a little more. P-38 Starfighter, I think one of the best commons, just an amazing 3/2 space unit in space that deals damage when it enters and when it leaves. And right on cue, we also open another villain cunning card on the doorstep, makes 3 ready to droids. So we just opened, between droid deployment and that, a decent amount of token enabling. If we add the green stuff like Kraken, now we have some payoffs, right? I mean, enablers for our exploiting. We just need to find payoffs, right? Because our best payoff is Malevolence, but not really in the yellow-green color. Another Nameless Valor. Another Rune Hako, which is great. I mean, blue solid. And Jesse is a decent aggressive red hero card. And then we opened Foresight as our rare. Now, this is not a card I would really want to play in limited most of the time. It's a little slow. It's a little clunky. Certainly, if you open a Yoda, and which is kind of the whole point of this card, is to like play it with Yoda, then I'd be more interested. And lastly, a foil strategic analysis. Again, not a card in limited I'd be particularly excited about playing. So after 4 packs, I am certainly looking at this yellow-green villain as kind of like where I want to be. I'm keeping an eye out on blue villain as well. Potentially pair that with one of those two. And I'm also looking at blue hero, which is still a little light, especially because our hero pool in general doesn't, like we've opened 1 hero green card, just a couple of decent, actually a few decent yellow hero, but very few red. So like in general, I think our pool is just much more villain heavy. So, and our leaders as well. We've opened, like I'm not super excited about Padme. Ahsoka, unfortunately, I think our red pool is pretty weak, not just in our hero cards, but also in our neutral cards. That's actually neutral. So I'm not, so far, hero, unless our last 2 packs really beef up the hero pool. It's looking like we're gonna be a villain seal deck. All right. We got another Django hyperspace, but unfortunately that doesn't change any of what our consideration would be leader-wise. We got base. All right. Heavy Persuader tank, a decent exploit red card, right? But I don't see red being a powerful pool for us. We have a decent amount of cards. I just don't think they're that exciting. Drop-in is a decent heroism card. We probably play it in most of the decks. It's not super flashy or anything. Droidica Security, a villain, exploit, payoff, solid card. Advanced Recon Commando, 4/3 Overwhelm. It's a card that will make most hero green decks, but it's not a reason to be in hero green. Kind of similar, B1 attack platforms, probably a card we'd play in most villain red decks, but not really a reason to be a villain red deck. Hotshot V-Wing, 2/3, Textless for 2, and Cunning. Fine, right? And here's another decent Cunning card, Hidden Sharpshooter, 4/3 Ambush in Cunning. I actually really like that card because, you know, very high on Ambush. This is a card that can survive into some hits, can kill 2 power units, and then still survive. Here's Republic Commando, pretty generic heroism card. Breaking In, so this is like this set's Surprise Strike. Instead of giving 3 power, it gives 2, but also gives Saboteur. Solid card in Cunning. Another Disruptive Blast. We got one of those earlier. A Blood Sport. Another Soulless one, which, you know, now we have 2 Soulless ones. I'm a little happier with Grievous, especially because we also opened On the Doorstep to make droids and a droid deployment. Like, I think Grievous, I'm leaning him over, like, Django for this villain yellow stuff. And, wow, okay, a third Rush Clovis. So that is kind of crazy, honestly. So we have 3 of that rare. Like, he's not a bomb, he's just a good card. But that's kind of wild. Hyperfoil Vanguard Droid Bomber. All right, last pack. All right, Nuke Gunray. So if we wanted to be in villain blue and we didn't want to pair it, if we wanted to go like blue-green, for instance, we now have access to that color, which we didn't until now. As we can see, like, our leader pool is kind of shallow. Like, we got it's much more spread out actually in the heroes, right? Ahsoka, Padme, Quinlan, but we only have 2 colors of villain leaders. Volunteer Soldier. No, thank you. Another Vanguard Droid Bomber. So we could really be in this like aggro-y red stuff. Padawan Starfighter, we saw that before. Another Separatist tank. Batch Brothers is a card I'd be pretty happy to play in a hero red deck. I just don't think we're playing a hero red deck. 6 cost, 4/6 Sentinel. It's fine. Hailfire Tank is an interesting card because this being just generic villainy means that it can go in more decks. It's a pretty solid payoff. So, you know, it's not like fancy or anything, but it is just a decent card. Another Hotshot V-Wing, another Dwarf Spider Droid, 3/4 grit for 4. Here's Republic Defense Carrier. I'm not a huge fan of this card, kind of regardless of what we're doing. Here's a Kashyyyk Defender, and he's like not a very good 2-drop because he has no power, right? So unless you have a damaged unit, he's not really playable. All right, we got a Hyperspace Execute Order 66, 6 damage to each Jedi unit. You know, in Sealed, with the amount of leaders that have the Jedi trait, I probably would just play it. And like, if my opponent doesn't have a Jedi as their leader, I'd probably just resources. But this like one-shots Ahsoka, for instance. You know, it doesn't one-shot Quinlan, doesn't one-shot Anakin. But I think I'd probably just play it. And then we got Guerrilla Insurgency, which, you know, I'm not playing this in Limited, but it's a cool card. And then we got a Hyperspace Foil Rare General's Blade. Now, General's Blade is a good card. You know, even if it doesn't go on a Jedi, I kind of liked Fallen Lightsaber, Jedi Lightsaber just on pure rate, even when they weren't going on Force users in set 1. I think General's Blade, if you're playing green, you're probably just going to run that card. All right, so I've kind of sorted my pool. As you can see, we've got like all the colors are sorted, and then also by like villainy, heroism, and no villainy, just generic, right? So while we were building, I think we were pretty clearly identifying that villain is where we're at. I do like to do a little double check in general just to see, but like our hero pool is pretty shallow. I don't love how limited it is in red, for instance, and even though we have a decent pile of red non-villainy, non-heroism cards, nothing there is exciting me a lot. In fact, I think the villainy stuff is a little better, but also not that exciting. So I'm mostly off of red. Like, I've identified that red, like, we know how good our yellow villain stuff is. We know both hero and villain blue got a decent amount of help. We know our villain green got a decent amount of help. So, and even our hero yellow, right? So red, I think we're off of. In addition, talked about it before, so we can't, for villain blue, we have to pair it with either like yellow, really. So if we're gonna play, sorry, hero, our hero green is also like very shallow. So if we're playing hero, it's gonna be blue yellow, which means it's only Quinlan, which is fine. He seems like a good leader, but the pool is shallow. Our blue pool, other than like Perilous Position and Vanquish, is just mostly generically not so exciting cards. So you know what? At this point, like, because I was doing this while I was opening packs, I've identified that I'm not really I don't think the hero pool is that strong. And I like just kind of getting it out of the way. I think it just cleans up the table, clears up my head a little bit just to like not have all that stuff in the way. So I'm off of that. I will always look at the end through those cards again, because I might want to play some stuff out of aspect. And certainly in sealed, more so even than draft, you often need to play a few out of aspect cards simply because you didn't open enough. So now I'm looking at what colors of villain. So we've got 3. And frankly, we're playing yellow. There's just no way we're not. Even our neutral yellow cards, we had some decent stuff in here. Even like, I think the Hotshot V-Wings are solid too. Not too exciting about the Clone Dive Trooper and In Pursuit, but we're in yellow. So we're in yellow. What are we pairing that with? If we can pair that with anything because we have a yellow leader. So what I like to do now is I know I'm in yellow. Which leader do I want to play? We've got 4 choices, and I think we've identified Asajj is not really one of them. And honestly, Newt is a little too synergy based for me to want to play him in sealed unless I get an absolute crazy amount of token generation and exploit cards. So I'm really between Jango and General Grievous, and there is just a tiebreaker here. We opened 2 soulless ones, which is a 1-cost 3/2 in space when you play it with General Grievous. We didn't really open anything to make use of Jango's ability, so it's nice that he's a 3/7 for 5, but that's basically all he is. So for this sealed, we are making a General Grievous deck, and now we need to find his second color. Is it blue or is it green? So, blue. For the villain stuff, some real powerful stuff. Rune Hako is an absolutely amazing 2-drop. Malevolence looks like a very good payoff. And then the Droideka security is solid. So we're going to look through the neutral cards. Vanquish is great. Perilous Position is great. This Ion Cannon is fine. The Paralon Starfighters are open too. I don't really like either of them. Foresight, don't like it either. It doesn't really work when you don't know what's on top of your deck. We opened 2 Disruptive Bursts, which I'd probably play one if I was in blue. I'd try not to play the other. Multi-Troop Transport is a decent exploit payoff, especially since we have a decent amount of droid creating ability, but we can't have too many, right? So if we were going to play Droideka Security and Malevolence, maybe this would be our 3rd exploit card. And then here's a 2/3, right? He does 2 damage to himself. We'd probably play it just because you kind of need to, right? So this would be our blue pool that we'd be kind of, all right, let's do it. So it's 6 + 4 is 10 cards. So how are we on yellow? Well, we're playing Elite. We're playing all 3 Rush Clovises. We played both soulless ones, and we'd play On the Doorstep. Of the single aspect aligned yellow, we'd play both Hotshot V-Wings. We'd play B1 Security Team, the Hidden Sharpshooter. We'd play Breaking In. Here's another exploit card, so we have to keep that in mind when depending on how many exploit units we want to play. And we'd try not to play Clone Dive Trooper and In Pursuit. So I'm going to put that in the rest of with the blue cards that we kind of don't want to play. So that's 3 + 3 + 7 is 13. So that's 23 cards. And then we got to look at our villain stuff. So droid deployment, we'd play Dwarf Spider Droid, 3/4 grit. Now, it's a droid. This is actually decent with Grievous because he can give it Sentinel. It's got grit, right? So if they can't one-shot it, it's not a great card by any means, but it certainly is passable. Like in sealed, you end up playing cards like this. Like you just kind of have to. And then Execute Order 66, I talked about that when we opened cards. I'd probably just put this in my main deck because I think it would absolutely annihilate some leaders. And then anytime you wouldn't be facing against a Jedi leader, I would just sideboard it out in games 2 and 3 or just resource it. And then Hailfire Tank would be another exploit payoff. When we compare it to like the Multi-Troop Transport, he's a 7/6. The Troop Transport is a 3/6, but has the on attack ability. Even though the Troop Transport costs less, I actually kind of just like the tank a little more. I don't think this coming out for 3 versus this coming out for 4, if you're able to exploit it. So we might end up having to play all of it, right? So we said we were 23 cards and we just added another 5. So that would be 28, right? So we would need to play a couple out of aspect cards. That's fine. We know we're mostly playing all this yellow stuff, so let's put the blue stuff away and look at what we got going on in green. Remember, we had 10 blue cards, and we saw some of the power level was kind of top heavy with like our Rune Hakos, Malevolence, and a couple of removal, but not so much depth there. So, green. These are really good. Droid Commando and Kraken, very good. Separatist Super Tank, it's fine. It's like a bigger version of Hailfire Tank, right? We don't get the exciting stuff like Malevolence, or Droideka Security, which I think is a little better because it's cheaper, but it's just like, all right, more big things. Not super exciting, but we get Kraken, who makes more droids, so a little bit more oomph in that sense. General's Blade is great. Nameless Valor, not so much. Republic Arc, great. Nameless Valor, not so much. Legionnaires is fine. Encouraging Leadership, nah. Resupply, probably the most exciting part about playing green here. And then 500 First Liberator, we'd play it, but it's basically just a 3/3 for 3. So that's 9 cards. And I think blue is just better for this. Mostly because other than like these 3 cards, Kraken, Droid Commando, and Resupply, maybe this Arc, I just am not like majorly excited about the rest. The blue is giving us a much better early game. 2 Rune Hakos are great and is giving us an absolute bomb for the late game in Malevolence and some removal, something we really don't have a lot of in Vanquish and Perilous Position. I think the blue just makes a little more sense, even though it is sad for me to give up Ramp, and like Kraken is great. So let's put the blue here. And let's move this green aside, and we still need to go through some more cards because we don't have 30. So General Grievous is here, and we're gonna kind of sort our deck a little bit by a curve, right? And you know, I do like having early units. I think it's very important. Geonosis Patrol Fighter is a 5-drop technically. On the doorstep goes in the units, even though it's an event. Soulless One is a 1-cost. Rush Clovis, of which we have a billion. Our 3-drop slot's a little light for sure, although the Patrol Fighter can be a 3 if we need it to. Now we've got some of our exploit stuff, which I'm just gonna kind of pile together. 2 more Rune Hakos. So like we have plenty of 2s. It's our 3s that are a little light, but not much we can do there. It's nice that we have a 1-drop because on turn 2 we can go 2-drop plus 1-drop, which is certainly a pretty helpful thing. And then, so we've got a pretty good early curve. It would have liked to have some more 3-drop units, but you know, we simply didn't get them. Here's a droid deployment. Our 4s, we have a lot of 4s. And then this Hailfire tank. So, I think we said this was 28 cards, but I am going to count it again. And I am also kind of interested in cutting one of our big exploit units. If possible, like I just don't think we need like so much, because in reality, we can exploit maybe 1 or 2 units in the game, but we don't have like infinite fodder to play those big things. So having so much of these big units that are a little difficult to play. Now, like the Droideka and Malevolence are definitely in. Droideka Security you can even just play without exploit, and it's not terrible. It's a 4/5 Sentinel for 6. A little worse than the Ion Tank, who's a 4/6 for 6. So we're going to go through some of the cards that are in our color, which, you know, we looked at it before. It's not exciting. So I am going to peek a little bit at some out of aspect stuff and see if anything is particularly cool. So some of this stuff, like R2, for instance, would cost 4. It's not terrible. The attack pod would cost 8 and then potentially 7. A Saj could cost 2 if we exploit twice. Bloodsport potentially as a 5 cost. And then volunteer soldiers. And to be perfectly honest, it might be the volunteer soldiers. I didn't find anything particularly great. You know, there is one. I think I would play General's Blade for 5 and just try to stick it on Grievous, because if he can become a 7/11, he might just carry you to victory. So I think that's reasonable. Another one that's reasonable would be playing Resupply. for 5. Just on that turn, you get to get Grievous out. But I think the tiebreaker here is that we're so light on the 3 drops that even just like being able to play a 2/3 raid one, and you know, all the droids are troopers, so this card can sometimes just cost 2, is okay. So my idea would probably be to play the General's Blade and 1 Volunteer Soldier. The General's Blade would be a 5 cost. And then I would double check the costs, and then I might consider cutting one of these big units. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So that's 30. And then the last decision I would be making would be, do I cut one of these big payoff cards and maybe play the resupply, maybe play the other Volunteer Soldier? And I think round 1, I would probably just play with the extra payoff card and see how it feels. And then if I'm just like drawing too many of these cards and can never exploit anything, I would consider trimming down on that. But we'd be playing Grievous Blue. Got a nice blue base here somewhere. This would be the deck. And I think it's a solid sealed deck, right? Like, it's these decks rarely have crazy power. You're kind of at the mercy of what you open. But I think we pieced together a deck that will be efficient, especially in the early game, which is really important because it doesn't matter how many big, awesome cards you have that are up at the top of the curve. If you get curved out by your opponent, they go 2 into 3 into good 4 and then play another good 4 and whatever. We have so many Rush Clovises that we might just overrun our opponent. It's a pretty strong card in that mid game. So yeah, I think this is a solid deck. And yeah, thanks for sticking around. Hope this was helpful. Till next time.